everybody, and welcome to this episode of SEN Talks. I'm here with Joanna Gibbs. Hi, Joanna.
Hello.
And Joanna is the CEO of SENsational Tutors, which is a tutoring company which assists children and young people who have EOTAS packages. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how EOTAS packages are formed, what's in them, what do they entail, do they even work, do they not, what does it look like, for example. And before we get into that, I think we were saying outside, Joanna, weren't we, that I think it's just a good idea just to recap to everybody listening what an EOTAS package is, how to get it, etc. So EOTAS is short for education otherwise than to school. It derives from about 3 different pieces of legislation, but essentially what it is it's for children and young people who cannot attend school, essentially. So local authority have an obligation to educate everybody who is under and at school, compulsory school age. Sometimes that isn't possible at a school because the child or young person has SEN so severe or it manifests as such that they cannot attend a school. And so an EOTAS package is arranged and listed and detailed in that education and healthcare plan. Now, a lot of parents come to us sometimes and say, my preference is EOTAS. And that, legally speaking, is incorrect. EOTAS cannot be your preference because the legal framework for an EOTAS package and having it named in your plan is that no school is suitable and school as a concept is not suitable. And that includes, for example, an independent special school. If the local authority can find a school, any school, including an independent special school, whether it's near or far or residential even, and that can meet needs, then that arguably is an argument against an EOTAS package because you have a school that are saying they're suitable. At that point, legalistically, you'd have to almost challenge, and I was going to use the word attack, but that would be wrong. You'd have to challenge the suitability of that school that's on the table. So once we're at that stage where we've been, and a lot of parents, I'm sure the parents you will work with, Joanna, and a lot of clients that I know that go through this system and eventually have EOTAS packages named, it's usually about probably a year, isn't it, that they've been looking for a school and they've probably consulted with nigh on about 20, 30 schools and they've all said no for some reason or another. And you're at the stage where you say, right, okay, let's get an EOTAS package, and that's because there's no other way. My child's not been at school or hasn't left their bedroom for months. Speaking to somebody this morning who said that their child hadn't left their bedroom in 5 months, I think it was, which is heartbreaking. So in order to get these EOTAS packages, we need the evidence, of course, because when we go to tribunal, the judges will look at the evidence. They are an evidence-based body. And say we've got something from an educational psychologist and a clinical psychiatrist or psychologist, for example, saying that this child needs to be educated at home. Usually those reports are quite different because they will set out exactly how much tuition and how much contact that child or young person needs. And then it will be for someone like SENsational Tutors to deliver that kind of education. So if I maybe start with asking you kind of generally, what does that look like? What does that package look like for your tutors? Are they in every single day? And bearing in mind we're talking about children and young people who can't engage
absolutely
a lot of the time.
Yeah, very often the parents that we work with do have quite a substantial EOTAS package. In some cases, it's not possible for that young person to access so many hours. So it could be that a specialist tutor works with them on a one-to-one basis just once a day, for an hour and then builds up. Yeah. What is absolutely fundamental in this, of course, is it's developing that relationship with the young person. Yeah. EOTAS packages, as a concept, I think are absolutely incredible if they're done right. What really frustrates me about them is that they actually have to exist, by the fact that the system has failed these young people so much, that this young person has experienced so much trauma that, and not been able to attend school or even get out of their bedroom. And the fight, obviously, of the parent behind this to get the package in place, that shouldn't be a thing. That shouldn't be something that the family would have had to go through on anybody's watch, considering the parent's well-being, but also considering that young person. And the longer it takes for that young person to access education, the longer they are missing out on education, of course. And as we know, life is so short, and a young person's life is so short that they're not. If there's a window of opportunity there, that has been missed. Yeah,
of course. And you think, like, the longer that they wait to actually attend school, the longer they're missing out on, the more they have to catch up on, the more used to. Because a lot of our children and young people who've got EOTAS packages are on the autism spectrum, and so the more used to that kind of life that they're becoming accustomed to, they then are going to have to transition out of it. But I think going back to your earlier point, like building up that trust, I think is really important. So I remember one of my young people, and you have parents that say, or you have local authorities even that say, well, there's this massive package here that's been recommended, and this child or young person can't leave the house and aren't even tolerating social care, who are coming in for like a half an hour to check up on them and not engaging in anything. How the hell are they going to do, 4 hours of tuition a day, 1 hour of SALT every other day, or whatever it is? Yeah. So I know that from my perspective, I had somebody who was coming in at first. I forget if I think they might have been an occupational therapist. And like the first sessions, the occupational therapist was coming in, sitting on the sofa and watching Harry Potter, because they knew that the child or young person's, that was one of their interested subjects, one of their favoured subjects. And then a few sessions later, the child would be sitting on the stairs and watching it with them. So occupational therapist on the sofa, child on the stairs. And then a few weeks later, they sent the cat down to say hello. And then a few weeks later, they kind of come to the bottom of the stairs. And that was how the trust was built up. And then conversation was begun. And sometimes, that'll take like 6 months.
Absolutely. And that's exactly the right approach. The challenge that we have here is whether the local authority accepts that approach. Yep. Because, even as a tutoring agency, we're being asked to provide all of these reports. My feeling when it comes to EOTAS packages, it's feeling more and more like school, which is completely counterintuitive. We had a local authority approach us the other day and said, can you please send us the curriculum map that you're working alongside? It's like, this young person was about to commit suicide a few weeks ago. There is no curriculum map. Yeah. Do you really understand what's going on here? Yeah. And that's really where my frustration lies. It's so much about developing that trust in any way. Yes, absolutely, that child's interest. And I think that's how and why EOTAS packages can be so successful, because of that one-to-one support and the ability to develop that trust and relationship and everything that goes alongside that. It's just now, we are up against the potential, the changes with the SEN white paper, and this push towards creating EOTAS packages that incorporate so much red tape, which is not what they were supposed to be about, especially considering, the journeys that these families have been through.
Yeah, of course. Have you found that local authorities are generally against EOTAS? Loaded question, I know the answer.
You know what I find really interesting, let's go with frustrating, is it so much depends on that one individual at the local authority. The one individual that either they have ideally they have a background of special needs. Best case scenario, their child, has a diagnosis and really cares. But some don't. And what really frustrates me is there's individuals in the local authority, and it's them that makes that individual, that one person makes a decision for that family's life. Panels, local authority panels, when, as a company, we have a lot of families that approach us and ask for quotes for EOTAS packages, and those go to panel and get agreed. Speaking to local authorities about, because I was trying to understand how is the decision made, And there are, thankfully, we have some good relationships with local authorities, and they share the frustration by the fact that there'll be one person at the panel that makes the decision for that young person, and that individual may not have read all the papers, may not know that child, and yet they are allocated the ability to make that decision. And I feel like that is really, really frustrating.
We shouldn't really be like that, though, should it? Because the idea of a panel is it's in the word, isn't it? There's multiple people making that decision, so it cancels out any kind of bias. But there's also multiple experiences and qualifications in that room, drawing from, I would hope, professional reports that they have read and have taken into consideration, and drawing from their own knowledge of what is available in the local area, in order to make that decision. But I'm not here. We're not here to do local authorities a disservice, because they are often in difficult positions. But sometimes I have seen subject access request responses, and having gone through correspondence, that there is one person who's dug their heels in on a point. And you think, you are running this. You are running this decision. This is you that's blocking this, and I've got no idea what. And sometimes I do, I'll speak to parents. Have you heard of this person? Never.
Yeah, and they make that decision. Yeah. I mean, we've got a case going on at the moment. So because SENsational Tutors and the tutors are so highly experienced and qualified, which is obviously amazing, able to meet needs, and we do a really profound matching service, the success rate of the tuition and the support that we put in place is phenomenal. So much so that the young person progresses so well, whatever progresses looks like, I'm going from this young person was, going to commit suicide. Now they don't. Now they're able to engage. That is success. Obviously, it's massive. Not he can do his GCSE exams. That's not what we're about. But because of how successful it can be for some of these families, then the local authority jumps in and tries to remove the budget and removes the tutor because they see this young person being able to access education and tries to consider an alternative approach, be it likely cheaper. And, going back to talking about the panel, if there's that individual in place who's making the decisions and, they have control of the budget, and they are the ones making decisions, then it could be that they are making not the right decisions because of the budget constraints. And I appreciate, as you said, the local authorities are in a really difficult position when it comes to this. But I think knowing the family and knowing the background and knowing how challenging this young person's life had been in terms of the trauma they may have experienced, you'd be thinking about, you need to think about the best possible outcomes, not only now, but if they don't receive the right support currently, that gets stripped away, what's going to happen to them and what's going to happen, to the national budget in terms of us needing to support that young person that's going to become an adult, and then it's adult social care. It's fascinating to me that we're not thinking about the bigger picture.
I know. I've said till I'm blue in the face. I think SEN is an investment for local authorities to save on their adult social care budget. But when you are in the local authority like I was, when you say that, there is such a divide between those two departments, for example, that there's no way on the ground to get people who make these decisions to recognise that. Because on the ground, that's my pot. And I'm accountable for that pot. And I have to explain to the powers that be, to the politicians and the councillors at the end of the year, where that money has gone. And if I say, well, I spent it so that adult social care doesn't have to spend it in 10 years' time when probably no one in this room is going to be here, it's not going to go down that well. It's the same why sometimes these things aren't agreed beforehand and we have to go to tribunal, because it's easier to say to those people holding the purse strings, tribunal agreed it, and we lost at tribunal. We fought it all the way.
Yeah.
But we have to pay this because it was a tribunal order. So that's kind of the situation that, in reality, money-wise, that goes on behind the scenes. But like you said, what we mustn't lose sight of is, that child's no longer suicidal.
Yeah.
And they can, I don't know, do some trigonometry now, maybe. But if I
just engage, or
engage,
play
whatever
computer
it
games,
is, whatever
anything,
it is.
yeah, absolutely.
But if I take this away,
Yeah,
we're going to go back to where we were a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, before we had it put in. So,
and that's pretty much inevitable.
Yeah,
because that, it's not overnight that a young person can develop a relationship with somebody. Some time and care and effort needs to be put in place between the individuals, be it a specialist tutor or an OT or SALT, as you've explained as well. And so that young person, not only the young person, but the family as well, the parents who have been, really, have had such a horrific experience by the system, and they've lost a lot of trust. And here they are working with individuals in their home, because obviously it's very often home-based. There is a parent here.
It's quite intrusive as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there is a parent here who is able to trust another adult themselves from this other experience that they've had. Their child has attempted to attend school. The teachers obviously may not have been trained or may not have been able to understand the young person. So obviously that they've experienced trauma. But here is an adult and a family and a whole unit. We need to think about the young person, but everybody around them as well, the impact that has. On everybody in that family, be it the grandpa, the grandma, it has a profound impact. And I think it does take a long time to redevelop trust, and for that trust just to be removed, or the ability, or that individual with whom they trust to be removed from that person's life is just horrific.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. What I wanted to ask you is, what's it like when you kind of first go into a family who's had this approved, and funding, everything's in place, all of the timetables in the plan. How does one approach going into a family? What is it? Because it's not just that child or young person. It's the whole setup, isn't it?
Absolutely. So very often how we get in place with the parents is that the parents will have been given another provider, or the name of another provider, by the local authority. They've probably, the other providers, and I don't know any names specifically, but the other providers have attempted to engage with the family or the young person, and it hasn't worked. That understanding and ability to develop that relationship was just not there, be it lack of experience or training. So very often the parent will find out about us, request us to the local authority, and the parent, is so happy, obviously anxious.
Obviously.
We had a new tutor in place yesterday with a family, and the mum texted me afterwards, absolutely amazing. It's anxiety provoking for everybody, because you just don't know. You can't really tell what that relationship is going to look like and how successful it could be, and it's going to take time. But by the fact that we have been allowed as a provider to support that young person, the family is always incredibly happy and excited. And over time, when that young person is slowly able to engage, it's, the parent that texted me yesterday said, "Your company has saved my child's life."
I bet that's
literally, in this family's, the father had committed suicide last year, domestic violence, et cetera, the local authority had been unlawful. And this was another situation where we had done, because this is actually the second tutor, this is another situation where we had done so incredibly well, or the tutor had, to engage the young person into education. He was in his bedroom. Now he's actually able to access education. We've done so well that the local authority had attempted to strip some of the support away in terms of budget. Then they were unlawful, and now the local authority has literally just thrown money at the family and aren't questioning anything. which is, you know, it's a brilliant outcome.
Yeah.
What is amazing about this family is that the mum, through the fact that we were able to support the son so well, the mum has regained her own life.
Yeah.
In terms of...
See that a lot with the EOTAS families.
Yeah.
Because it's usually mum.
Yeah.
It could be dad sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's usually mum.
Yeah.
Is so engrossed with the severity of the needs that this child or young person has.
Yeah.
That their life is kind of just on the back burner.
Yeah. And again, the mental health impact on these families. But this mum now, I've got a really good relationship with her. This mum now has started, and well, she was able to train as a counsellor and therapist, and she's doing that now to support more families who have gone through the same or similar situation to herself.
Yeah.
And she's so empowered. And she said, without her having the capacity to train as a therapist, she wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
And it was by the fact that the EOTAS package that we put in place was so successful, she had the capacity to, you know, to develop herself as a parent.
Of course. Going back to the local authority throwing money at a family, I imagine that's a personal budget, right? Something like a personal budget.
This isn't. I mean, this is quite an extreme, and that's a further conversation. This is quite an extreme situation because the local authority was so unlawful and admitted it that they are, you know, agreeing to everything, which is great. It's great at this point. You know, the social worker is amazing. She's been through a lot of different social workers. And again, as per my previous point, it so much depends on that individual person. Mm-hmm. Now, the social worker is amazing. Previously, not at all. But now the social worker is fighting her corner. And that is luck. Who, you know, it's not like you pay privately for a social work and 100%, select.
100%.
So there's a lot of frustration, I think, in terms of finding that right person. But when you have them, great.
Yeah.
But it's potluck.
Thank you to everybody for listening, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you very much.